I think you're realistically looking at a high sentence on the 3 to 4 years side. I think it's very unlikely that would actually get that much. But if you imagine him convicted on all counts, I mean, he's not exactly showing remorse here. And so I think you could imagine a judge being pretty stiff with this.
All right, Ben Wittes, Lawfare is just doing the Lord's work covering these trials. I've been following this morning your colleague Tyler McBrien, the managing editor there on X. If you can stomach X, I would recommend this follow. He's let me know that Donald Trump is in the courtroom this morning. He's hunched over and he appears to be bleeding. So that's the latest news we have. But why don't you give us some big picture about what is happening in the courtroom today? We've got jury selection and just a little bit at the 30,000 foot level.
So I know nothing about bloodshed in the courtroom, and I can't speak to that. Trump is in court in New York for jury selection. Here is the story about jury selection in New York. There is a 42-question jury selection questionnaire that contains all the usual questions, as well as some highly unusual ones, like, have you ever worked for an organization run by the Trump organization? I
just have to tell you, I saw this questionnaire, Ben. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to tell you, I was reading through it, and you get down to one, it's like question 41 or something. It's like, do you have any strong opinions or firmly held beliefs about former President Donald Trump? And I was just like, I was imagining being a New York resident and receiving my jury summons.
Like, no.
Yeah, no, I was going the other way from my perspective. I was like, what a dream piece of mail to get. Like, I'm looking at it and I'm going, I get to be on the Trump jury. I don't know what is legal and what is illegal here. Can I take the fifth on jury questionnaires? But I would be very anxious. Be like, Donald who? I'd love to be on this jury. I would love to be on this jury.
So you would have to remember, these are going to be done orally. They're not filled out. And so remember, you would have to lie repeatedly to the judge's face to do these.
That would be very tempting.
To lie your way onto a jury. But I have to tell you my single favorite question. I don't have the questionnaire in front of me, but it's, are you a member of or associated with any of the following organizations? And they're like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the 3 Percenters, and then stuck in right at the end is Antifa, which I think
just in case,
you have any face masked dudes who want to blow up the court. Look, it's going to take a good while to seat a jury in this case. The good news is Justice Merchan, the presiding judge, has done it before. He was the judge in the Trump Organization criminal case. So he's he's presided over jury selection in one of these cases before. And in New York, between the civil cases and the criminal cases, they've actually had a bunch of these. The E. Jean Carroll cases were jury cases, and the Trump Organization case. So there's a bunch of different cases where there's some experience picking a jury. That said, it's going to take a while. My guess is it'll take about 2 weeks. And you're going to end up with a very odd collection of New Yorkers who profess either truthfully or falsely to have an entirely open mind about Donald Trump, have never engaged in political activity for him or against him, and have never worked for any organization either that he controls or like a contractor that he stiffed, right? Or a media organization, any organization that either side would be suspicious of. So I think you're going to end up with like the most apolitical Washington Heights grocery delivery guys, I think is what we're looking for here.
Well, that's America.
Yeah, no,
That is
I'm
America.
not mocking it.
Yeah.
I was just trying to imagine what the actual profile of a juror in Manhattan who could get through this questionnaire without arousing suspicion looks like.
I'm just hoping it's one resistance mom on Xanax who's able to play it cool enough to just sneak on through. That's what I'm praying for, but we'll see. We'll see if it happens. For the folks that just need a refresher on the case, Phil Rotner wrote for the Bulwark about this. I just want to kind of read what, once we get a jury, what are going to be the essential facts that the prosecution needs to prove for Trump to be held liable. And he writes, one, that the Trump organization falsely recorded payments made to reimburse Michael Cohen, who went to jail, you might remember, for hush money payments he made on Trump's behalf. Two, Trump personally either made or caused those false entries to be made. Three, Trump acted with intent to defraud. I think the most important one. Four, Trump's intent to defraud included an intent to commit, aid, or conceal the commission of another crime, in this case, campaign finance violations.
Or tax violations. It's actually a combination of the two.
Explain.
So you don't actually need to have committed another crime to do it in the course of committing another crime. You need to have done it in the course of intending to commit another crime. So it's possible to intend to commit more than one crime. And the prosecution only has to prove one, and they have three theories. One is state campaign finance law, the second is federal campaign finance law, and the third is various tax laws. And so basically, if Trump does it intending to defraud by way of violating some other law, they will throw a lot of different laws as spaghetti at the wall here, and the jury only has to believe one of them.
I think this is basically the nub of the actual legal. Before we get to kind of the political implications of the actual legal questions here, that is basically it, right? Like the Trump defense will come down to essentially that, they weren't intending to commit other crimes, that this was about, he didn't want Melania to know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think so. There'll be a couple other elements of the Trump defense. The first is the Michael Cohen is a lying sack of shit.
Yeah.
Stormy Daniels is a lying sack of shit defense.
Yeah.
So I think they will probably contest that there was a sexual...
Don't believe them, but if it is true...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if it is true, it was
but
just...
if I did it, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, in a kind of OJ sort of way.
Yeah.
I think that those are the sort of two big defenses. And then I think they will get as much in a very OJ-like way. They will do their own version of the... Mark Furman is a racist cop defense, which is these guys are out to get me, as part of a, and it all amounts to, by the way, this isn't a criticism. This is the way defense lawyering works. It all amounts to throwing up a lot of smoke and then arguing to the jury that there's a reasonable doubt. The bigger criticism of this case, I don't think, is that it's weak, though people often frame it as a weak case. On the evidence, it's a pretty strong case. Like he did this stuff, and they've got a lot of evidence of it. The bigger
somebody is already, again, I always keep bringing this up when people are like, this is a weak case. It's like, someone literally already went to jail for this.
Right.
This already happened. So
I think what people actually mean when they say it's a weak case is two things. One is that this step-up theory is sketchy.
Yeah.
And by the way, the judge in this case said that was wrong. When on the motion,
can you just explain the step up theory, for people that don't know, is what we were talking about earlier. That has to be a felony. It has to be in service of intending to do another crime.
Exactly. Yeah. And people have said that that's sort of a novel legal theory. They have all these sort of disparaging words for it, as though it were kind of like a creative way to kind of get around the fact that Trump didn't do anything illegal. Well, the judge took about 3 pages to dismiss this argument in the course of his opinion on Trump's motion to dismiss on this ground. He really treated it as a pretty conventional application of New York criminal law. And he didn't think it was a hard question, that this was a viable theory of liability. So look, I think the actual criticism of this is that the case is not weak, but trivial, right? That this is people feel about this case the way they feel about the way Democrats felt about the Monica Lewinsky case, right? With Clinton. Not that he didn't do it, not that it wasn't illegal, but that, come on, he was just lying under oath to cover up an affair, or he was just falsifying business records to cover up an affair and in the immediate run up to an election that he thought he might lose. I that it was kind of normal behavior for a super powerful alpha male. Sorry, got the helicopter again.
I don't know. Just thinking about Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and the super powerful alpha male preying on younger women just kind of gave me the ick. I hear you, but it just gave me the ick for a second. Just the way you phrased it. I don't know what it was. I just got icked. But continue.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, but I feel like, as somebody who I am old enough to have been, writing about law at the time of the Clinton Starr investigation. I wrote a book about the Starr investigation. I always thought it was a pretty significant case. Was it worth impeaching him over? No. Was it worth an investigation? Was it completely disgusting unpresidential behavior? Yes. And that's how I thought about it at the time. And that's exactly how I think about this case. The other importance of this case is that it may be the only case that actually goes to trial before the election. And that means that if you're concerned about the criminal president problem, the entire weight of that problem, or a wildly disproportionate percentage of the weight of that problem, is falling on this case, as opposed to the cases that are more weighty in terms of the gravamen of their allegations. And so it's possible that we could have you could have to cast your vote with 34 convictions on these relatively trivial New York charges and pending cases on much more serious charges elsewhere. And that's an important piece of the picture as people think about criminality and Donald Trump in the run-up to the election.
Hey, JVL, it's been months since I've seen you without a screen intermediary. I'm just dying to lick your face and put my hands on you. And so are you going to come do some public events with us and be among the people?
Human contact? Yes. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm coming out of the house. I'm leaving the basement for 2 days. May 1st in Philadelphia and May 15th in Washington, D.C.
This will be the first Bulwark event where we encourage jeering, because it's Philly, people, so jeer us.
Yes.
May 1st.
If we have a bad show, I expect the Philly crowd to boo us.
Please. Or anyway, even if it's a good show, boo us anyway. We deserve it. May 1st in Philly, May 15th, 6 and I Synagogue in Washington, D.C. Come hang out. Go to thebulwark.com/events to get your tickets. Thebulwark.com/events. And JVL, I just can't wait to get all up on you. I am probably on the most bullish, open, whatever you say, interested, excited side of the Bulwark, with maybe the exception of George Conway, who's just ready to see Donald Trump be held in a cell for this crime. I'm maybe next on the list of people that are I think he should. I think that this.
And George, by the way, is also being consistent. He was also excited to lock Clinton up.
Yes, exactly. And I was also very Team Monica. Well, this is a very Team Monica podcast, so this is consistent. But George is the most. I don't know. Chuffed about the possibility of Donald Trump getting prosecuted for this. I'm down a level from that, but the one hesitancy that I have is just that the campaign finance element of this. Our campaign finance laws aren't really being enforced. We do not have the FEC is a joke. And I think on the merits, you can make a strong argument that it would have really hurt Donald Trump. I know people say that's crazy to think because of the Access Hollywood, but I think adding the Access Hollywood thing onto Stormy, onto Karen McDougal, onto the sexual assault, there'd been more information out about all this. I think it may have mattered. It was a very, very close election. You can't tell me the Jim Comey letter mattered, but learning about Donald Trump cheating on his wife while she was, in labor wouldn't have. I just maybe we don't know. So I think that it is a merited argument on campaign finance, but like we're not really doing campaign finance law in this country right now.
But we do tax law. Yeah. And remember, the campaign finance law at issue is not merely federal, it's also state. And so, while I don't know what New York campaign finance enforcement of New York campaign finance law looks like, to be honest, but there are a set of more diverse theories of that second liability element than merely a federal campaign finance violation.
Okay, we have Tyler in the courtroom here. Just reading, not a lot. He's saying Trump stone-faced as they're talking about the way he cheated on his wife while they're pregnant, as the prosecutors do. No reactions. He is posting through it all, hunched over now, mostly looking at his phone, looking up every now and then. He's posted about polls already this morning. He's posted about the 2016 New Hampshire primary. So, there you go. Our poster in chief in the courtroom this morning. Ben, any other big picture thoughts on the political implications of all this, and where you think this trial goes over the next few weeks?
So, first of all, I think the trial will move faster than people expect it to. This is not a super dense case. We're going to hear from the aptly named David Pecker, who's the chairman of the company that runs the National Enquirer. We're going to hear from, a group of super seedy characters, but I don't think this is, it's not the January 6th case. It can be presented in a pretty crisp fashion. So I think it'll run probably 6 weeks or so. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see whether having Trump tied up in court every day, what effect that has on the just sort of the process of campaigning, other than when Eugene Debs was in federal prison in 1920 when he ran for president. We've never really seen anything like this, and Debs was a minor party candidate, not a major party standard bearer.
I do want to say on the David Pecker side of this, that for listeners, there was a great New York Times Magazine story about this recently by Lachlan Cartwright. That was what I saw working at the National Enquirer during Donald Trump's rise. The grossness of the National Enquirer in 2016 is extremely, I think, lost on people, and it's worthwhile a refresher. Maybe I'll get Lachlan on the podcast. Actually, you've just inspired me. Okay, last question for you: the potential penalties. Let's dream. Let's just get excited for a second. Let's get a little, it's Monday morning. Lift our spirits. A lot happening in the world. With Donald Trump, let's say, is convicted, then what?
I think you're realistically looking at a high sentence on the 3 to 4 years side. This is not going to be the one that sends him to prison for the rest of his life. I think it's very unlikely that would actually get that much. But if you imagine him convicted on all counts and having gone on the campaign that he has been on to attack the judge's daughter, to go after, right? I mean, he's not exactly showing remorse here, or making amends. And so I think you could imagine a judge being pretty stiff with this. The question to my mind is, when would sentencing happen? And, when does that, like, everybody talks about the impact of conviction on the election, but I'm always focused on the question of the impact of sentencing. It's one thing to vote for somebody who in some abstract sense has a criminal conviction. It's another thing to vote for somebody who, if he doesn't win the election, is going to prison for 4 years. That's a psychologically sort of a different step. And I think Trump is definitely making matters worse for himself with his conduct toward the court, with his conduct toward the prosecution, and toward the witnesses in the case. The jury has to be anonymous because of fears of Trump's behavior toward them.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that comes back and smacks you in the face hard when you face sentencing. And if he is convicted, I see no reason why he wouldn't be sentenced relatively promptly, 8-10 weeks after conviction.
What does probation look like for a guy that's running for president? What does it? I mean, like generally speaking, if there was a period between a conviction and sentencing, there would be limited travel.
Right. I think the prosecution has sort of waived all that stuff, at least for purposes of trial. And they have at the federal level too. There's that said, look, I think, the other question is, everybody assumes, and I do too, that he would be free pending appeal, that you're not going to lock up the major party presidential candidate while there's an appeal pending. But, is that right if he's hurling invective at the judge, if he's, attacking the system as corrupt,
Right.
if he's right? And I don't think we know the entirety of the answer to that question. Judges have a lot of discretion. Advice to listeners when you're on trial in front of one: don't go out of your way to piss him or her off. There's just nothing in that for you.
You're not supposed to call the judge's daughter a tramp. That's not a general strategic move for a defense.
Look, I'm not saying there aren't circumstances in which you would want to do that, but there aren't that many.
I think that there probably are no circumstances. Well, Ben Wittes, once again, we have Donald Trump who's complaining that everybody's out to get him, that he's treated so unfairly, getting special treatment from the courts. So we will leave it at that. Thank you for being back for this report. And I think we'll probably be seeing more Ben Wittes over the next 6 weeks. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you later.
All right. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Bulwark Podcast. Hopefully less news tomorrow. Lots happening out there, but we'll see you then. Peace.